Ladies and gentlemen, let's go ahead and prove this triangle is congruent by side angle side. I'm trying to prove that triangle ACB is congruent to triangle ECD. If we're using PEA, we start with our P. My P is always my point, what I'm trying to prove. So triangle ACB is congruent to triangle ECD. Next is my evidence. I always put what is given down. So given C is the midpoint of AE and DB. So I always put my given first. C is the midpoint of AE and DB. And this was given to me. My next thing that I can put down is what this midpoint does for me. So what does a midpoint do? If C is the midpoint of AE, it's going to cut AE in half into two congruent segments. So it's going to say AC is congruent to EC. So I can write that guy. AC is congruent to EC. And this is telling me that they're congruent by the definition of midpoint. Okay, so C is the midpoint of AE, but C is also the midpoint of DB. So if it's the midpoint of DB, then it would tell me that CB is congruent to CD. So these two are congruent. So it would tell me that CB is congruent to CD. And my reasoning for this guy is by the definition of midpoint. Okay, so I'm trying to prove this by side angle side. Well, I already have one side and two sides, so that's my side and my side. By side angle side, I need to prove that the angle that's sandwiched by my two sides are congruent. So I'm trying to prove that this guy is congruent to this guy. I'm trying to prove angle ACB is congruent to angle ECD. How can I say that these two angles are congruent? If I'm able to flip these over on top of each other, I know that they are vertical angles. So I can say angle ACB is congruent to angle ECD, and this is by vertical angles. Okay, I now have side, angle, side. I have proved side, side, and an angle. Careful when we are reading this. This is not our donkey theorem here. It is actually side, angle, side. It's just the way that we wrote them down. So we always look back at our diagram to make sure it is side, angle, side. My two sides are sandwiching my angle. So I have enough evidence here to write my analysis. Triangle ACB is congruent to triangle ECD by side, angle, side congruence.